Good afternoon. We'll get going here in just a second. I want to give, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Good sound check. Okay. Yeah, we'll just get
Need to turn on my video.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
You have permission to do so.
Oh, it says you need permission to do so. Hang on.
Host has stopped it, so.
Is it still not letting you share the screen? Your own screen?
Able to start video. You can't start video because the host has stopped it.
Huh. It's really strange. I'm going to do this. This should solve the problem. Okay, try now.
Okay. Give me one moment, please.
I just made you the host here, so let's see if that doesn't.
There we go.
There you are. All right. Let me, we're a little past our start time, and no worries, little technical challenges. Like I say, technology is nice when it works, so we're here, so it all worked out.
Right.
All right, let's record. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to this Airline Geeks webinar, and I'm very happy that we have a very excellent and amazing guest, one of the people I admire in the aviation field the most, Henry Hartfield. He is an aviation analyst and has tons of wealth of experience in the airline industry. And not only that, he's just a great guy. So without further ado, I would like Henry to kind of give your introduction and your background. So tell us about a little about yourself.
Sure. Well, Ryan, thanks. Thanks for inviting me to be on the Airline Geeks webinar and podcast. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm Henry Hartevelt, and I am an airline and travel industry analyst, not an equity analyst. My background has been on the commercial side of various airlines, including American, TWA, Continental, and a couple of others, working in roles such as marketing, planning, brand, product, frequent flyer, distribution. As an analyst, I have been an analyst now for 20 years, 11 years at Forrester Research, and I've had my own company for 10. And the research that I conduct looks at the intersection of traveler-related topics, commercial topics, and the technologies that support or enable all of that. So it tends to be more commercially focused than ops. But obviously operations is critical because that's how you execute all the commercial ideas.
Very nice. Thank you for that. So we kind of wanted to get into some topics and especially local or more recent developments here in the airline industry, and kind of wanted your take on them and what they mean given your experience. So obviously, a big one is the recent news about American staff shortage. And that has been something that has cascaded into hundreds of delays and something that I'm almost certain will now cascade into this July 4th weekend, which is turning out to be extremely busy and record-setting for the U.S. airline industry. So what's your take on that? Do you think they rushed to add capacity to the marketplace too quick? Without the proper staffing, the left hand not talking to the right hand. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Ryan, well, indeed, the left hand and the right hand did not appear to talk to one another. Look, I understand what American, for that matter, all airlines around the world have gone through over the past 15 or so months They've been starved of revenue, and they're very eager to get their airplanes back in the air as quickly and safely as they can to start making up for some of that lost revenue. And especially here in the US, where we've seen, I think, a much better than anticipated recovery among the domestic leisure travel market and even international where that's allowed. It really took airlines by surprise. But what's very clear is that the commercial team, namely planning and scheduling, said, oh, we have this many airplanes, let's go ahead and schedule them, without thinking through all the details about can we get them crewed. And so between having to bring back employees such as pilots, flight attendants, and others who may have been on furlough or an voluntary leave of absence, or who may have even left the company but have the right to return. You don't just snap your fingers and say, okay, you haven't flown in 15 months, have at it. The FAA requires pilots to go through recurrent training. Airlines have their own policies that may be more stringent over the FAA's standards. And in the earlier part of the year, when airlines were bringing their pilots and flight attendants back for recurrent training, they were hamstrung by physical distancing limitations. And those restrictions limited how many people could be in a classroom at any one time, how many people could be in a simulator where that was required, and so on. So that was a problem. Getting people back in and retraining takes time. So there are some employees who were on these leaves who may have said, I don't want to come back yet. Or, you know what, I don't want to come back at all. I've thought it through and I'm leaving. And so they didn't think through the need to potentially rehire or hire replacements. All of these different factors contributed to it. It was made worse by a series of technology outages, which affected multiple airlines, but included American Southwest, and bad weather, which so far appears to have affected American and Southwest the most. And so you had this really bitter, unpleasant stew that resulted. And unfortunately, American and Southwest were in the thick of that stew. And along with the airlines were their employees and their customers. And in fact, this morning I heard from a friend of mine traveling from DFW to San Francisco, whose American flight had been delayed, and he just described it as a comedy of errors. And he described the airline as a Keystone Cop operation because every flight was being canceled and they were just scrambling to try to figure out what to do. And they said, the agent said their aircraft was being brought over from the hangar, and yet it had been, I think he said, close to an hour between the time they announced they found the plane and the time he had called me and no plane had shown up. So, I'm sympathetic to the operational challenges that airlines have, but I'm not sympathetic to poor planning. And in this case, American and Southwest appear to not been able to plan well. And the fact that Southwest is going to its flight attendant group offering double pay for the July 4th weekend says things are not good. American and Southwest are in the news right now. Doesn't mean that in a few days it'll be some other, won't be some other airline or group of airlines experiencing this. So it's really unfortunate, but it's also embarrassing. And frankly, it just shows poor leadership and poor planning. And that's really disappointing.
So do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better?
I'm concerned it could. I know that with every day, every week that goes by, that many more pilots and flight attendants complete their training and become eligible to get back on the line. And it makes it easier for the aircraft scheduling folks and the crew scheduling teams and so on. I'm concerned that we're going to be in this sticky situation with potential staffing shortages through July, depending on the airlines and who I'm talking to. Some say by the middle of the month, things should be better. Some say they're concerned it may not be until the end of the month. And then we also have to acknowledge the fact that when bad weather events happen, or there are technology outages or just delays that occur for whatever reason, those delays, those cancellations not only potentially leave crews and aircraft out of position, but they eat into the legal flying time that those crews may have. And once you get past the middle of the month, that's where things get dicey. And I'll point out that Southwest was asking its flight attendants to fly with double pay through the weekend at the beginning of the month. So things seem to be really bad when an airline has to do that. And by the way, I will speak from experience. When I worked for Continental, we had more than our fair share of operational problems. So it's not like I haven't been in the shoes of the folks who are going through this. And certainly as a revenue passenger, I've sat through a bunch of terrible experiences, including the summer from hell, the blue flu at United, in 2000, and many others.
So let's back up, just for a second, and let's, talk about from a bean counter of, a revenue management perspective. By not planning and putting too many seats and capacity in the marketplace with an unexpected amount of demand, wouldn't you say that now they're paying more and now they're losing more money because of all these cancellations and crew displacements, et cetera?
There's certainly a risk that these problems could exacerbate the financial problems. Now, let's take several steps back. The good news is that demand is strong. The good news is people appear to be willing to pay the fares the airlines are charging. So that's really good news. Definitely these problems will create some kind of revenue challenge and cost challenge for the airlines. In comparison to COVID, it's chicken feed, right? Because you had airlines losing, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars a month, going through cash flow, I think as much as $40 or so million a month, maybe more, during the worst parts of the pandemic. So they've vastly improved their financial performance in the past few months. But it doesn't help. I mean, what all of these problems do is, one, they make people say, it sucks to fly. It reinforces negative perceptions. It reinforces the mindset of, I'll just take the cheapest fare I can find because no airline is worth paying a premium for. And it just does nobody any good. And you're right. It certainly, these problems drive up the airline's costs, whether it's vouchers to customers for meals or hotel stays, whether it's decreased or lost loyalty, whether it's less willingness to pay for the fares the airlines want to charge, whether it's the higher costs that are involved with having to, figure out how to get crews from where they are to where they need to be, and so on and so forth. It's not a good situation for anybody right now. And you know what? The employees know it, and the employees are embarrassed too.
I was just going to ask about that because frontline employees, especially ones dealing with customers, the TSA and FAA are reporting a very, very high number of unruly passenger cases and enforcement actions against those individuals. Do you think that's playing a role in sort of the frustration and culture within the airlines right now, that people are just frustrated because they're getting treated so poorly on the front lines?
Ryan, the question about the unruliness is a good one. Most of the unruliness appears to be from people who are taking issue with some of the federally mandated policies, such as primarily, really, wearing a mask in the airport terminal and aboard the aircraft. We have had some people who appear to have had too much to drink, whether at the airport or even before they got to the airport, at the airport, or on the plane. And, but we've also had people fighting with flight attendants over the need to fasten a seatbelt. This is not anything new. The FAA has required people to fasten their seatbelts since, the black and white days of aviation, since seatbelts were first put on airplanes, right? Going back to whenever that would be in the 1920s or 1930s. This has just, never been an issue. But when these kinds of cancellations occur, and with airlines operating fewer flights now than they normally do during the summer, and therefore having fewer options to reprotect passengers and serve passengers who are affected by delays and cancellations, and telling somebody, I'm sorry, we can't get you to your destination today. And by the way, we won't be able to get you there for another couple of days. that definitely sends people off the deep end. And with mobile phones being prevalent, everybody's a videographer now. Social media is the bullhorn we all have. These incidents go viral. It's important to observe and remind everybody that it is a minority and a small minority of flights where these incidents occur. It's just that the visual nature of these, the drama of it, is the type of thing that frankly makes for good TV news coverage.
It sells, as they say.
Yeah, but none of these problems help. None of these problems calm people down. And again, this is where airline policies and employee empowerment are critical. This is where the airline finance and accounting people have to say, you know what, when we're delaying flights, when we're canceling flights, when things are really going bad, we need to give our employees the ability to work with the customer, whether it's putting that customer on another airline at no additional charge, whether it's giving them more generous than perhaps normal vouchers for meals or hotels, whether it is reimbursing for rental car or other alternative forms of transportation if that's what the customer needs, allowing the traveler to get a refund. I do give the airlines credit for eliminating the change fees, so that's definitely good. But the employees can only do what their computer systems allow them to do. It's not like the gate agent at your flight is also the CEO of the airline and has the secret code to override whatever restrictions are in place.
Right. So to pivot a little bit on a more positive development, earlier this week, United announced a variety of announcements, but including a massive order for new airplanes, but more on a passenger experience level, really improving the domestic onboard product, including adding in-flight entertainment screens and improving, just the overall cabin experience. So, where do you think that leaves American? Quite frankly, I mean, Delta and United, the two big three carriers, making an effort to improve the onboard experience, and American is kind of the last man standing.
Yeah.
That puts them.
United's announcement of 200 Boeing 737 MAX jets, including 150 MAX 10s, plus 70 Airbus A321neos. This is a massive order, and you combine that with United's other orders for new jets, they're going to be receiving roughly 500 or so new aircraft, of which 300 will replace existing aircraft in their fleet, and the other 200 are for growth. And you couple that with United's announcement also that they will be getting rid of approximately 200 of the 50-seat CRJs, an airplane that many call Satan's chariot. I think will also be good and welcome news by many travelers, and for that matter, crew. And yes, the United passenger experience is going to be much better than the one we currently know. They are adding in-flight entertainment systems, in-seat in-flight entertainment to the narrow-body planes that they will be keeping. While the former Continental 737s have live TV, they don't have very much stored entertainment. This will do away with live television, but will have a massive library of stored content, including movies, games, television programs, and more. So the narrow body fleet gets an upgrade. They get new seats. They get new cabin lighting. They will add more economy plus seats, the extra legroom seats. I think on some of the narrow bodies, they will be adding more first class seats. United is definitely going to make a play for the premium traveler. And the interesting thing is United was not doing this recently. Now they realize they have to. And I think Scott Kirby and the leadership realized the premium traveler is where the profit is. So you're going to have United and Delta, I think, duking it out for the high end of the market. And you're right. The big question everybody is asking is, so where does this leave American? Does American decide that they want to or need to elevate their passenger experience to be competitive? Or does American stay where they are or even continue to downgrade their passenger experience and become, as one friend of mine described it, Southwest with first class. So, Doug Parker, who is American's CEO, and Robert Isom, president, and the board of directors at American, have a very interesting and a very serious series of business challenges and strategic matters to address. Because literally, the future of American Airlines hangs in these decisions. Does American continue to be or strive to be what American once was, which certainly was a premium airline? At one time, American's marketing strategy was, and this is when I worked on the airline's advertising, to be tangibly better than its key competitors in everything that mattered: on-time performance, reliability, courtesy, professionalism, what we now call the passenger experience, and more. Is that going to be American's strategy? Is it going to be to keep up with it or to be within reasonable levels of competitiveness? Or are they going to say, we want to be the most cost-efficient network airline, in other words, Southwest with first class? If American opts to go down market, Doug Parker is taking it back to basically being America West, but with a much larger fleet and a global network. And I don't know if that will work. I don't know how American's partners in oneworld will think about it. And very importantly, I don't know how its partners, Alaska Airlines and JetBlue, will think about it. Because if you care about your brand and you're sharing your customers with a partner, you want to make sure your partner is at least as good or reasonably close to being as good as you believe your product is. And ideally, you want that partner to be equal or maybe even accept that they'll be a little bit better in certain ways than you are. I'm very, very concerned about what this means for American. And it's not just what Americans' revenues. This will affect Americans' ability to recruit employees and keep employees and be a business that its employees view favorably as a place to work. Because while it's more difficult for unionized employees to leave an airline because of the seniority system, talented management people can move and do move around the industry.
Right. But, I think the argument that American will and has made is that they are the only U.S. airline to still offer a genuine 3-cabin first class product on their 777-300s and their A321Ts. So what do you say to that argument that, well, they're still the premium carrier on long haul and on transcontinental routes?
Well, no offense to American, but it's having flown flagship first domestically, it's not all that special. To be very honest, the seat is the equivalent of the business class seat on its 777 or 787 wide body jets. Not the exact same seat, but similar. It's individual pods. That's very nice. The flagship first lounge and is extremely nice. The catering on board, not so great. And American has been very public that they intend to further downgrade what was already mediocre food and beverage program on the plane. And the service that you get from American's flight attendants can be highly variable. Some can be fantastic, but there are some who let you know that you as the passenger are an inconvenience and they do the bare minimum. Now, American's not alone in that, but it just seems that American has a culture problem that leads to some service issues. And by the way, there's nothing stopping either Delta or United from deciding to reinstate first class on any of their long haul or domestic aircraft, and going back to a 3-cabin configuration, if they believe the revenue is there. If enough, and really the prime reason that American kept a long haul, has kept long haul first, was based on pre-COVID behavior by business travelers, and on the premium transcons was really because of JFK LAX and American's very successful long-standing relationships in the entertainment and production industry, movie studios and other entertainment companies. If those companies choose not to fly American, or if they've got fewer people who are paying for first class, who knows if American keeps first on any of their aircraft. And by the way, with organizations like JSX running 30-passenger, almost executive-like aircraft on certain routes, and the availability of Wheels Up, NetJets, FlexJets, and others, XOJet, the truly premium demanding traveler has options that don't involve a traditional airline anyway.
Right. So we've talked about all the different airlines here, and the big question for you is which airline here in the United States, given some of these recent developments, might have the best outcome as we trend up the recovery curve here?
Well, we've been talking about the core four for the most part: American, Delta, Southwest, and United. And of those four, I would say that right now, United and Delta, I think, are going to have it would be the best poised, for growth and financial success. That's, I think that if Southwest can work through these issues, they've got now a new CEO who will be on coming into his role, Bob Jordan, in February. If Southwest is able to make some of the decisions that it needs to, namely, what kind of airplane do they add to their fleet aside from the 737, I'm confident that they will be able to work through these issues. I'm really concerned about American. And also, we can't ignore the fact that American has the highest amount of debt of the core four. But I'd also like to say that I've been impressed with the nimbleness and responsiveness seen by Alaska, Hawaiian, and JetBlue, three niche airlines, and how they've added routes, how they've been customer focused throughout this. And we now have six ultra low cost airlines buzzing around: Avelo, Breeze, Frontier, Spirit, Sun Country, and Allegiant. So, these six budget airlines are going to, I think, also play a very important role. And of course, Spirit and Frontier are the relative 800-pound gorillas in this business. Allegiant wins because it is just so distinct. It's really very much a travel company. I hope that Avelo and Breeze will be successful. They're, neither one is yet 90 days old. I hope that their business performance goes well. I hope that they're able to continue expanding because, frankly, their success is good for the consumer. Having more airlines results in more choice, more competition, better fares, better access between various markets, and ultimately, that's what matters.
So the last question here is, what should airlines be doing to ride the positive curve as we recover here from COVID?
Well, I think the real thing is to understand, for these airlines to understand who they are now as businesses, what their brands stand for and do not stand for, what their businesses stand for and do not stand for, and then say, okay, are we happy with this? And if we're not, what gaps do we need to fill? What strengths do we need to build on? What customers do we want to have that we don't? And what customers do we have that we don't want to have, whether it's because they're not profitable or we can't afford to serve them well? Those are the types of questions that the airline's leaderships and their boards should be asking. And those are not easy questions to answer. It requires a lot of thought and a lot of consideration. Airplanes are expensive and they have to be paid for. So we are talking about decisions that could impact the financial fortunes of airlines for a long time to come. And again, going back to United and its decision to cast itself as a more premium airline going forward, that's a very bold and frankly very expensive decision. And what United is saying is it's not that they're going to ignore cost, but they're going to focus more on the revenue side of the equation. With the amount of business travel expected to shrink potentially as much as 20%, even 3 years from now compared to where it was in 2019, our research shows around 18%. We expect it to be around 18% below 2019 levels in 2024. That means that there's going to be a smaller pie of business travelers, and that means airlines are going to have to fight for those people more. There's, I think, though, a growing market of premium leisure travelers. and airlines are going to have to fight for those customers. But you've got to have a core promise behind that. It's starting with, frankly, reliability and punctuality. If you don't have either of those as an airline, it doesn't matter what your fares are, what your planes look like, how much legroom you do or don't offer. Airlines are time management tools. We fly them because we need to go somewhere quickly, and other options don't yet exist.
Right. All right. Well, that's all the questions I had. Definitely wanted to do a big thanks to you, Henry. This was a great discussion, and a great discussion too, like I said, ahead of the July 4th weekend here, which is going to be a monumental record-setting weekend. It's shaping up to be, at least for the airlines. So we'll see how it goes, and it should be interesting. So thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be available on our YouTube page once it's ended. So thank you, Henry, and we will be talking soon.
Thank you. And to everyone traveling over the July 4th weekend, have a safe journey.
Indeed. Thank you.